Hello and welcome to LetsTok Podcast, where we continue to explore the conversations that matters. I'm your host, Saurabh Gupta, and today I'm thrilled to introduce, I would say, an absolute powerhouse of inspiration and motivation, someone who has made immeasurable contribution to technology, leadership, diversity, and inclusion. Our guest today, a distinguished engineering leader and a software technology champion has stood out as a dynamic keynote speaker, speaking on an impressive range of topics from leadership, women empowerment, to complex technical issues in engineering. She has an inviolable record of delivering over 200 talks and conducting numerous workshops across the globe, spreading her knowledge and insights like, I would say, wildfire. In addition to her speaking skills, she has clocked an impressive, I would say, more than 900 hours of coaching, nurturing, and guiding many of their professional journeys. Her commitment to career and life coaching has brought a profound transformation in numerous lives, bridging the gap and potential. I would say, bridging the gap between the potential and the success. Not just that, she has shown her dedication to empowering women in technology as a founder of a lean in network, Women in Tech India, and amassing more than 4,500 followers. Or I would say by the time I was going through this, it must be more than that. Her influential work led her to become a regional leader and ambassador for Lean in India, or Lean in from India, I guess. And I'll ask her to confirm if that is the right one, demonstrating her relentless drive for the gender equality in the tech industry. As a prolific writer, she shares her wisdom through engaging blogs or micro blogs under the hashtag. I don't recall, but definitely I'll check with her, reaching out to the wider audience with her thought-provoking and inspiring content. In the recognition of her invaluable contributions, she also is a global award winner in the People First category for Lean In Women in Tech India community, and also been nominated to different awards. I think one of the Technology Playmaker Award among 44 countries. So, our guest is definitely a testament to the power of vision, resilience, and unyielding dedication. So, without further ado, let me bring to Preethi. Preethi, welcome to our show here.
Thank you, Saurabh. Thanks for having me here and thanks for that great introduction. I was like hearing to it, I was like wondering, oh, so
Yeah, I mean, uh, I try to make introductions because based on what you have done in the past, and I would say you sincerely deserve that. So, first of all, thank you for gracing our show here. And let's get directly into the topic. So, as we are going to discuss about emotional intelligence, so before that, while I'm preparing for your introduction and all, you have done so many things, and you have a passion towards, I would say, technology, leadership. We are going to discuss emotional intelligence. Is it something I would say hereditary, or this is something which really is there any kind of a story behind it?
it's definitely not hereditary
Yes.
because hereditary, I think my grandparents were teachers, which I think I'm looking forward to be one day, at least
Yes.
after my software technology job retirement that I take into. I think that would I would call it as hereditary part of it. But I think in terms of being ambitious or where it goes from, I think it actually goes to your roots, Saurabh, the way you are brought up as well. I always saw my mom working and growing in her career, so for me actually being in career or growing in career was something that I had to do naturally, that I had because I had seen her role modeling that, so I thought that was something that was there, where so I was privileged in that aspect of her. And there's a lot of learning that I had learned from her. I think one thing that she told me is Preeti, you might gain a lot of knowledge, you might gain a lot of money, and none of these would have any value unless and until you share it. And that's where my hashtag at LinkedIn comes in from, Preeti Anubhava Chakra, which means that's my wheel of experiences that I bring together by sharing. Because the more I share, I hear a lot from the other folks as well on how it helps them, or people bring in a different aspect about from whom I can learn from as well. So the lot of things into the journey that goes in is also the things that you are brought up as well, or what you have seen, perceived from the world around it, right? It's all about what you see around you and what you see within yourself. What makes you is what has been at least my journey, right? I see my journey. I feel very fortunate to be a lifelong learner of this journey. Like many people, as you said, I wear a different hat of being a coach, leadership technologist, and all of that, right? But I think one of the belief system that I have come through is believing in myself, to bringing in that change for making the transformation. And like for example, I'm not a technically an engineer. I'm a biotechnologist turned into an engineer.
Okay, okay.
So that itself is a transformation and adaptability that I got into the engineering space that I came in. Leadership was something that I started enjoying from the last 15 years. I've been in the engineering industry for 24 years now, and enjoyed the last 15 years being the leader, and wanted to again transform myself to be a better leader, and that's where I got into coaching. But now I'm also practicing coaching by bringing in career transformation and all of that. One of the things that I, be it my team members or be it my coachee, after 4 5 years or something, they come back, and when they give that feedback to me how I have helped them, it kinds of brings in the similar value that I was telling, that what I'm able to share is also something that they are able to gain through it,
Agreed.
right?
Yeah.
So, as I said, I think life has never been simple. I've also navigated through various storms of life, but the way I have been resilient today, like the way you said, the resiliency that I've built through all these things, is very much which I believe in, is igniting yourself within. And I go back to say that it is all about looking inwards and looking outwards, right? I think that's how I have navigated, and have been like always looking inside as well as outside on what changes I can bring in myself and how I can contribute. I mean, giving back has been major basis of all of my contribution that I have, and that's where I started lean in as well. I mean, for a very long time, when I was working, I always thought all my problems are my problems. Nobody in the world are facing the problems that I'm facing, right?
Yeah.
And when I started to talk to people, is like, it's not really. And there's so many things I have like excelled well, so many things others have excelled well. And that's where I brought in this community of Lean, and we really share a lot of things which I learn every day from my members today. And I learn from my team, I learn from my leaders as well. So and that's why I call this journey as a journey of being a lifelong learner.
That's great. I think there's a lot of things to unwrap, as you mentioned, and so let's go back a bit around the time, as you mentioned that you learned a lot about these sharing about knowledge and you said like you may get, your mother used to say that you get a lot of money or wealth, but until you don't share it, it's all worthless. So you understood that, and then you try to get to the journey about learning and sharing, and which shows because obviously as you go into a different career trajectory here, you also try to kind of create these organizations and empowering women and empowering technology in general. So in terms of all these transformation, uh, where exactly you get, which is our, obviously the heart of our topic, is does emotional intelligence brought you a certain kind of, I would say, get into the mode of, okay, I understand now how human behavior works, what are the body languages, what kind of feelings, because as you mentioned that what you were going through, this is not something very unique. You started seeing that there are a lot of people who share the similar kind of emotions and sentiments. Does that kind of getting into understanding or learning or I would say researching more about emotional intelligence?
Yeah, that's a very interesting segue to EQ as well. I'll let you let me tell you when I got introduced. I think it's sometime
Yes.
years ago, right? When I was, having everything in my career, right? I was actually stepping up well,
Mm.
no problem. At home, I actually have a equal partner who supports me, and for while I what I am today is for like more than 100% support that I get from him that
Yes.
shapes me as well. Right? While everything is fine, but I was still kind of unhappy, and there was a little bit of unsettlingness within myself. Right? A lot of people said it's also growing when you get old. You try to figure out what's your purpose, but I think at that it was my mid career at that point of time when I was like very unsettled. The work was fine, everything was fine, but being settled, and I found fine. And this person was my first coach, by the way, and my EQ started with my coach. And at that time, coach or coaching was not very prominent in India. There were like very few coaches, and when you say you have a coach, you feel there's something wrong with you.
Wrong
And
with you. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
But at that point of time, I felt something was wrong with me, right? When I wasn't able to, one of my friends said, "What's wrong? I mean, you have everything. That why is that unsettlingness, right? Even at work, also, you're not very happy about whatever is happening." Then I got introduced to EQ with my coach actually, and it was a very transformational journey, Sarah, for me in terms of how I got coached by him, right? And in fact, I looked at the same world with just a different lens, and now it was the lens of the EQ that I had put into picture, right? And what I learned in this transformation is, of course, it was a set of very assessment, and it was more about how it is, how I could see the world with a different lens, right? Nothing has changed around you, it's just the lens that you put very differently, right? And I think what I learned in all these things is the journey is about how you can go with your heart open hearted as big as much as possible, right? And also without judgment. A lot of time we say open hearted, but we don't bring the fact over judgment. It's very difficult to not
Yeah.
have the judgment part of it, and let my mind understand my emotions. And I will probably we'll go further into what the heart and the mind is all about, is where how I could come up with this. And in this journey, one of the things that I learned is about journaling about myself, understanding how my emotions are triggered, how am I managing them, how do I exhibit them, right? it I mean, I think the journey that took me into the EQ was this journey which sharpened. I mean, a lot of things happened after that coaching part of it that happened to me, right? I started, I was already a person who was running a lot of communities. And I
Mhm.
started this community like Lean in Women in Tech India because me being a tech, I wanted to do something. And it was, my coach was like, I was doing a community that was in generally for women, for diversity. He said, there are a lot of challenges that you've overcome. How about bringing this community? And I brought in this community, and within a year we were awarded. Then I changed my leadership style, right? There was a lot of, I could see the transformation that was happening, which I got as feedback, just not from my leaders, my team, but also back home, right? In fact, for my spouse, he said, you listen better now. I think one of the best feedback you get from your spouse is when he says you listen better now.
I can relate that. Yes.
Yeah, right? I mean, because most of the time you're in mostly responsive mode,
Yes.
right? And I think that's the journey which I think that was the most fabulous feedback that I always get, and I used to quote that. Not that I listen to him always, by the way, just a disclaimer there.
Yes.
But you tend to put in, as I said, the word or the situation doesn't change, they remain the same. It's just the different lens that you put in to see it, and how you would transform yourself and the people around you.
That's a very great way. So I think a few things which I would like to highlight for the people as well as you mentioned. The first thing is the self awareness, and try to spend more and more time with yourself. Initially, as you mentioned, that even though if you have a lot of worldly pleasures, everything is working fine. Now you are looking at the lens of other people. You have money, you have status, you have everything, but still there are a lot of people who are not happy. And when we say happy, is like, are they really happy in the way what they have accumulated over the period of time, or they are kind of really content and satisfied within it? And that's what I think one of the learning from your story would be, how not only kind of evaluating yourself, having understanding more awareness, trying to understand yourself, but also reaching out. So there are a lot of folks who understand all those things, but they do not reach out. As you mentioned, that a coach, your relative, or anyone who you think as a person full of wisdom, or you would like to look forward to, how this person is so cool, how this person is so calm, how this person, or if someone is trying to get into, oh, I have to get that much amount of wealth in my life. So you have to get a certain kind of coach or mentor who can guide you and provide you a different perspective and ask you those right questions which makes you think. So that is, I think, one of the thing you mentioned. And obviously as you go along, you get those aha moments wherein you said, okay, I think that's what it satisfies me. So you are now trying to embark in those journey wherein you are trying to assist other people, and not only that, you are also kind of providing your story, because it's not like out of the blue you just stood up and said that, okay, I'll help people, but you have gone through that. So that's a very good way to kind of get into maybe the next part of our conversation. So you got some good habits, a good thought process from your parents. You get into your professional life. You have a supporting spouse. You understand. You got a coach. You understood all this emotional intelligence, self awareness, what exactly you want in your life through. Now it's time to share. So you get into a part of the leadership in your organization. You started the company and organization. How exactly that emotional intelligence transform in your leadership? Have you I mean, do you have any insight that what are some of the examples which shows that this is how you can start your emotional intelligence development journey?
Yeah, I think before we get into like about the emotional intelligence development journey, let me break emotional intelligence, and let's
Yeah,
understand what
sure.
emotional intelligence are for us as well, right? For example, I think before we get into understanding emotional intelligence, we need to understand the emotions. Like as a human, we have around 400 emotions that we go through in a day. That's
Okay.
the number
Wow.
of emotions that we go through, right? And this is something that we don't actually have, we don't even pay attention to,
Hmm.
right? And when we say emotions, most of the time we say that we actually negatively look into it, but emotions can be both positive and negative per se, right? One of the things that when you feel, I'll give you an example, and then I'll
Yeah.
get into our leadership. I had during my leadership journey, and this was my after managing a team, this was my second stint into the leadership. Now I moved into an organization which was quite stable, and managing a new team altogether. Everything was new for me, and I mean, this was the first time I'm managing a new team. I mean, I always grew up
Mhm.
with my team, and then I grew up into a leader. It was more about your own comfort zone, that you know everybody.
Yeah.
Now you have taken the transformation to manage the new team. So there was a lot of emotions, whether I'll be successful, all the imposters that goes around you.
Yeah.
And it was one of these, and I know it was a critical meeting, and it was my couple of first meetings as well. One of the technical architect who was actually, walking through the architecture of it, and I was trying to understand. It was not that I didn't know the systems well, I knew the systems well, but this whole space was also new, people were new, everything was new. So I was probably asking some to understand more questions. And what happened in that meeting was a very uneasy feeling, basically, and the person, the architect, would turned out to be very rude with me, right? Or putting all my question under the carpet. And, and I was like, totally surprised with what exactly is happening. And one of the things is when there's a lot of emotion in each person, there is always this physical sensation that happens when an emotion gets triggered, right? Every person has different
Yes.
way of feeling. I just generally get warmer, and my ears get very warm by the way I feel
Warm,
the.
or maybe as some people sweat. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
and whenever I'm asking the question, I'm like, getting these, and this is the other waves of emotion that's going into me, telling that this guy is very rude with you. You need to now snap him, right? That's one set of emotions that comes in. Then the other set of emotions, that again the other set of waves that's coming and saying, no, no, you need just keep quiet, don't ask any question, right? There's so many things that's happening, and all in end, the meeting didn't go well, right? And what I did is I went to one of my mentors within the organization and my sounding board, and I told him that, I don't know if I made a right decision to move into this team, because, nothing is welcoming. And it was just just this meeting, right? And I was trying to know the team and all of that. And he actually said me, and we don't ask help. One of the other
Yeah.
things, like you said, right, we don't reach out for help. And I've always had a, I'd always make sure that I have sounding boards with me as I've grown up, as leaders, or as even when I was a child, I had my mom as my sounding board, and and my friends, and I ensure that always have been around me. And I encourage people to have mentors, coaches, and sounding boards. Sounding boards are really very different. They help you to, allow you to be yourself, right? And he listened to me the whole conversation. He was very quiet, and he said, "Why don't you set up one-on-one with this person?" And I kind of went with him on for half an hour, and he listened to me, and he said, "Why don't you set up one-on-one with this person and figure out what's happening?" And I was just about to leave his room, and he said, "Preeti, uh, I want you to listen to him and not put your point across."
Yes. Wow. That's great. Hmm.
Right? And again, that was again another set of emotion, like, listen to him, okay, kind of, but you kind of listen to your leaders, who are your role models. I set up a
Yeah.
one-on-one. Of course, the other person was not expecting that I would bring up this conversation of the meeting. I brought him, and we bought, and I just told him the context about, I was trying to understand things better, and that's how my question came in. But I kind of felt that, it was, the whole conversation was very rude. And as we went into the conversation got deeper with him over a coffee, actually. And he said that, it felt like I wasn't trusting him, and, trusting him. And my question felt that, there was the question of trust on what he's been explaining to me. And then finally, as we went into the conversation, I was referred to this team by the previous manager who was leading, whom he had not got along. So,
Mm.
he was
Okay.
carrying
He's
back
carrying that baggage. Yes.
baggage with him, and that kind of broke during that coffee conversation. And and then I think we kind of developed a very good relationship, and we really transformed technology, people, and process together over the period of 4 to 5 years. And that was the deep relationship that we developed with the same person, right? And one of the lessons that I learned there is the trap was not to put your point across. right?
Yes.
It was a set of intention. So just to put this whole story into technical terms, right? Emotions are always there, and everybody feels. You need to identify when you're being in the present. What are those physical sensations that you have? And one of the ways, just either note it down or identify those sensation, right? And those waves of emotions that comes in. The technical term of emotion is just the feeling that your mind reads it and exhibits. You can change that, what your the ingredients that what your mind reads it, right?
Yes.
And that's about emotion, and intelligence is about how you can traverse through these emotion, managing your emotion, managing others emotion for a specific goal. It's a simple term about emotional intelligence. All about is, and we otherwise call it as EQ. You will see me talking saying EQ a lot, which is nothing but a synonym of emotional intelligence. It's all about managing yourself, managing others' emotions, and going towards the similar goals, right? And that's why I say a lot towards looking inward and looking outward.
Yes, exactly. So that's a wonderful story. I think everyone who's listening, just to summarize what you mentioned, and this is something which is not something unique. It happens all the time.
Yes.
Whether it's your colleagues, it's your relatives, it's your family members, and sometimes it's as simple as reaching out and talk to them, which itself becomes a pretty daunting task. uh, which reminds me of two books which really I think everyone should be reading, and I don't know if you have read those. One is Crucial Conversations.
Oh, it's
Yes, right.
it's a
And
lovely book. I have that book as a Bible.
yes,
I always read, and you get very different meaning every time you read.
every time. Yes, that's a common feedback I've heard. I've read only once. Maybe I'll read it again. And the other one is Nonverbal Communication. So which also stress about how you have to do a conflict management, uh, how you can ask questions to understand the people who are asking or providing maybe a dissent or any kind of they are not agreeing with you. What exactly is the reasoning behind it, and how you can ask questions in a right way. So that's a great way to put those things. And I love the fact you mentioned about uh, it's not like you are just kind of responding, because as you mentioned that you can do an emotional response and then you will regret. And there is a umpteen number of stories where people give emotional outburst and then they regret, because that was the way how our brain works, and try to make sure that. And these are some of the things which is important to understand in terms of how we can be I would say self-aware, and instead of responding, start asking questions why that person is behaving in that way. And that's exactly you did. You reached out again, another classic example, that instead of making assumptions and making decisions, you went to the coach, or you went to someone who you look forward to and ask their perspective, and immediately you get some advice of how you can reach out. And that always goes both ways. And these are some of the things in leadership which I think a lot of time people talk about, but seldomly they practice it. So coming back to that emotional intelligence, you mentioned that this is how you can win heart of a lot of people and run a successful team. So now regarding the EQ, we mostly talk about IQ, right? We talk about intelligence quotients. We try to make sure that people are known people, or including myself, I should be flaunting the fact that if I have a high IQ, for example, why people do not talk about EQ?
That's a very good question, by the way. A lot of time we think that the IQ or the EQ, which we are talking about, is see, IQ is something that gets developed at the time of your high school or something, and it doesn't change, right? They always remain. They always remain in the same part of it,
Yeah,
right? They don't.
sorry to interrupt. I think your It
And
becomes
I
black. Uh, yeah, I
yes,
cannot see anything. It's dark.
I the light has not changed though, so I'm not sure what has happened.
I don't know. I mean, it was working, and all of a sudden it becomes a bit dark. Is it in your camera settings or something? Because okay,
Yeah,
there you go. Yep, yep.
I think it's just a camera setting probably. I just
Okay,
moved my laptop and it worked fine.
okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, so what I was talking about IQ gets developed at the time of your high school or some at that point of time, and after that it doesn't. They are always, it's basically a stable part of it.
Hmm,
EQ is all about your experience and your journey that you develop, and it's a skill that can be developed, unlike IQ. Right? It's definitely a skill that is developed, and a lot of people mistake EQ to be nice. It is not being nice.
that's
it's all
important.
about it's all about how you manage yourself. As I said, right, it's about igniting yourself to understand what's within you and what's outside you, right? It's all about that. And I remember this conversation that I was recently having with one person who didn't want to get into the leadership side, and he said, Preeti, one of the things I don't have is EQ, so I can't become a manager. I was like, man, you are not supposed to say that. EQ is something that, everybody is. And by the way, this person was extremely good in managing stakeholders, delivering his content, managing through difficult conversation. So a lot of people who are with high EQs still don't understand that the EQ is not about being nice or managing people. EQ is all about people currencies. Definitely, it is a people's currency. But there are like there are like what Daniel Goleman described. EQ is all about self awareness, self management, social awareness, and relationship management.
Mhm.
If you actually divide this into the concept that I have been talking about, self management and self awareness is all about looking inwards, identifying what's your triggers, managing your emotions, how do you adapt towards this, right? Social awareness is all about empathy and how deep you can create these relationship, and all these you learn through your journey, your experience. But and sometimes it doesn't have, you can also learn from others experience as well, looking at others who have their role model and all coming together. So a lot of time the EQ and IQ are wrongly understood. It's very important that you have an IQ. It's equally important you have an EQ. People, like for example, the example that I told previously as well, right? The
Mhm.
person was so much with emotions, right? It also exhibits a bit of low EQ, not able to manage emotions. And a lot of times we say a very emotional person is a high EQ. Contrarily, a person with a lot of emotions is not with high EQ, because the person doesn't know how to exhibit their emotions. Right? So
Yes,
it is, how can you ground yourself to know? And it takes practice, Saurabh. It takes your regular practice for you to do, right? It cannot happen like, it cannot happen by reading books. It cannot happen by taking classes, right?
Mhm.
It is a practice that you need to put in yourself. It's a lot of self investment that you need to do. For you to traverse through that, you need to manage your relationship, the fundamental part is your self-awareness and manage self-management, where you can regulate these emotions. And that's where the rest of social awareness and relationship management comes in, really blend very well, right? One of the things that I learned from my coach, one of the things that I was always having challenging, it was, again, as I said, it's a new team and I was like managing, I didn't know how to go about. And one of the tip that I got is, when you start your day and when you enter your cubicle, just say hi to everybody, right? And say hi with their name. And hi with the name changes the whole equation. It
yes,
changes completely, right? You enter a cubicle and you just say hi, everybody will say hi, and they'll still be inside their laptops, right? But if I enter the cubicle where you are sitting and with others, I say, hey, Saurabh, you still turn around, you greet me, and we do have those connections where we can make the conversations, right? So it is that small little practices that you can put into your life, and you will need to be aware about making these changes.
Yeah. 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 I think you have really mentioned this, nailed it in terms of we talk a lot about IQ, but it's static. And after some time, the good news is EQ can be developed. It's kind of a gradual process. So it's a skill you can learn over the period of time. And most of the research has mentioned that EQ is something makes a leader more sustainable in terms of maybe IQ can get to a level, but if you want to sustain and keep growing, you should be having EQ as well. So that's a great way to put it. And these small things, right? Greeting people, and trying to kind of greeting with the name, which is again a classic way. Which I have read that. I mean, the name is one of the most beautiful sound in any language. So everyone would like to be addressed with their name, and if leaders remember their team member's name, and as you mentioned, while walking to the cubicle, or if you're working in work from home or whatever, if they greet you with the name, that create a different sense of leadership, teamwork, camaraderie, and those are few things which makes people think that this person really invested in learning and remembering my name. So I have to give in return the same kind of trust and that relationship. So yeah, that's I think you mentioned a really good important things about how the emotional intelligence and share your journey. I'm very happy that you mentioned few stories, because these stories help people to resonate if they have been in those circumstances and situations in the past. So let's get to the next section, which is our I would say the last section about those three questions which I always ask my guests here. The first one is, if you would like to define leadership, doing so many years work and working with the different personalities and people out there, how would you define leadership in one word?
For me, it is transformation always. Right? And you need to develop, one word is transformation, but you need to develop different leadership skills based on people, because not all of them are the same. And the ability for you to adapt through this transformation and also adapt your team together is where you can be connected with them to lead together. So I think transformation
Transformation.
is what I would say.
That's great. That's great. Very nice way to put it. Transformation. So yeah, we'll take that. The second one is, any favorite book or books you would like to recommend for people who are developing EQ, or as in your coaching sessions you recommend them.
So I think for developing EQ, what I generally do is ask is Emotional Intelligence 2.0. It's a small handbook basically. It
Okay.
divides into these four quadrants that I spoke about, and it has small exercise. Even the exercise that I said right now, just saying hi with a
Yeah.
name, is one of the exercise that's there. And what I do through my coaching is, ask them to develop each of these exercises that's mentioned. Take one exercise out of these four quadrants and practice it, right? Another important part, I think that's one thing that I would say in terms of the EQ. Other one is Atomic Habits book. I know it's more about habit, but
Yes.
it's also bringing about self-discipline,
Mhm.
self-awareness, and all of that. It talks about how you can transform. I'm a big fan of Atomic Habits book. So I know generally recommend both this. EQ is for mostly on the practical. EQ 2.0 is mostly for practical purposes, and Atomic Habits is based on how each of them want to transform, or want to bring the change.
That's great. So EQ 2.0 and Atomic Habits, what you recommend. And I think I do have one book. Normally, I'm mostly Kindle and or ebook reader, but I do have this emotional intelligence book, which is the Harvard Business Review. So I don't know if anyone has. This is also a pretty good book about, and you mentioned about some exercises. It does have that as well. So that's great. The third one would be any best, one of the best advices you got from mentor, which always sticks around when you are maybe down or when you struggle or when you have some situations which is not pleasant.
Don't limit yourself and believe that you can bring the change. And I think that's why, if you see a lot of transformation or a lot of
Hmm.
the things that I've brought, is I've never limited myself. Right,
That's
there's a
great.
lot of imposters, you get it. And having imposters, according to me, is not a bad thing. It's a good thing and a positive change. Recognize them and see how you can go beyond your limit, right? And that kind, and when you do that, you need to believe yourself. And I think this has been a valuable mentorship that I've always got, is not to limit myself.
That's great. That's great. Amazing. So yeah, don't limit yourself. I mean, you just have to go. That's what a lot of people say: be limitless, keep exploring. You do not know how much you go beyond of your mindset, because we always think that this is the most far we can go in any kind of walks of life and those different endeavors. So that's a great way to put this thing. I think these are the three questions. Last thing is, if people would like to reach out to you, what would be those mediums where they can connect with you?
I'm mostly very active on LinkedIn as one of the social media platform that is there. Preethi Guruswamy is where you could easily find me.
Yeah.
I also write my blogs in Medium with the same handle, Preethi Guruswamy. I write a lot about EQ, leadership, and my experiences that I bring in. One of my favorite topic is also about journaling. That I generally go on and on. Right, I write this under the hashtag Preeti Anubhava Chakra. It's the wheel of experience, which
Mhm.
brings in the transformation by looking inwards and outwards.
That's great. And we will add all those information on the show notes as well. So, Preeti, first of all, thank you so much for providing some time and giving a perspective, not only about the EQ side, sharing your story. And I think the story, what you have, is not very unique. Most of the people definitely can resonate that and kind of learn. And if you have, if it really helps, please reach out to Preeti for any guidance, any kind of assistance. And that being said, yeah, I would wish all the best for your future endeavors. And thank you so much for sharing all the good insights today.
It was a pleasure talking to you, Saurabh, and thank you for having me here and allowing me to share my journey.
Definitely.